so much, Mark. Mark and Mary are dear friends, and when Mark called to ask me if I would participate this morning with you in this 20th anniversary and just the work that you're doing, of course I said absolutely yes. And what better way to start the morning than with Javier Colon? I'd love to start every day that way. That was amazing. And to see all of the potential and possibility on this stage, because that is what all of the young people represent. The potential within you to do and live your biggest dreams, and the possibility that we have to nurture and feed and to pour into you. Good morning again, and thank you for having me. This 20 years that you've done all of this important work. I looked at the core values, and I'm very familiar with First Tee because Northern Trust is a supporter of First Tee, along with having volunteers on the boards. But I wanted to just reiterate for my own grounding the characteristics and the values that First Tee embraces. Imparting these 9 core values of honesty, integrity, sportsmanship, respect, confidence, responsibility, perseverance, courtesy, and judgment. Through the game of golf, they speak to us in ways not just for your organization, but as humanity. I think for many of us these days, we are experiencing a kind of existential anxiety about what is going on around us. And yet, when I feel that there is so much discomfort in our society, I come to Orlando. And not just seeing the Mickey Mouse ears as soon as you get off the plane, but come to this energy. And as someone said before, everyone is just so nice. You're kind, you're welcoming, all of those things, and that gives me hope. And I don't usually do shout outs, but I have to do one. I met Randy White at the airport yesterday, and he didn't think I'd do this. So thank you, Randy. Another wonderful First Tee person to meet. We must be drivers for change, not just in golf, but society as well. Many people turn to sports as inspiration for acceptance, and it is therefore essential that diversity and inclusion are part of our core as we work to fulfill our mission of serving our members and growing the game. That's the CEO of PGA of America, who goes on to say our association's leadership intentionally positioned diversity and inclusion as a foundational principle of our long-term strategic plan. We recognize that we will be defined by how our commitment to diversity and inclusion resonates throughout the PGA of America. Or as I like to say, we've admired the problem long enough. First Tee is doing something about it. Now, I have to admit, I'm not a golfer. I follow the game, and Northern Trust is a big supporter of the First Tee, and we have the Northern Trust Open, which has donated this year alone over $1.4 million to charity. And since I work in the financial sector, and for my entire career, I have been I've had some golf experiences. I have an intellectual understanding and appreciation for the game. So early in my career, as I am wont to do, the way I'm wired is I take lessons. I look at data. And I recall the instructor telling me, first of all, that one has to be patient to have any modicum of success in golf, which made me know I should stick with playing my clarinet as a hobby. But one of the things that he did say to me was, there are 3 basic premises governing the rules of golf. And I know there are lots of rules of golf, but just 3 basic things that stuck with me because I see them as a metaphor for life. Play the ball as it lies. Play the course as you find it. And if unable to do either 1 or 2, do what is fair. Play the ball as it lies, play the course as you find it, and if unable to do either 1 or 2, do what is fair. So for the purpose of our brief time together this morning, I'm going to use Webster's definition of fair, which states treating people equally without favoritism or discrimination, without cheating, or to achieve unjust advantage. And I thought about those rules as I thought about First Tee and what this amazing work you're doing is, reaching over 10 million young people. And I have a formula that I use in corporate as I talk about diversity and inclusion and how it all ties together. Now, diversity is the mix. Inclusion is what you do with it. We've moved beyond talking about diversity in terms of food. I jokingly say that, many, many decades ago or years ago when we talked about diversity and inclusion, it was fried rice Friday, Taco Tuesday, and Soul Food Sunday. It was all about food. Very rarely did we have those kinds of conversations that make us a little bit uncomfortable as we were trying to move from awareness to action. So my formula is this: diversity drives inclusion. Inclusion drives engagement. Engagement drives innovation, and innovation drives growth. I was really, really pleased to see the amount of research and data that First T has done around your diversity and inclusion strategies. And what it means is that you really are understanding the implications of a changing world. When I looked at the data and the work since 1997, it reflects the understanding that the changing demographics in America and the world have a significant impact on the economics of business and organizations as we experience this shift in customer base, access to talent, and purchasing power. The way that we win in the marketplace is really allowing ourselves access to that. The Council on Nonprofits states, for some organizations, the moral imperative of equity may be enough to spur action. Others may be moved by data showing that diversity can boost the productivity of decision-making and that a diverse workforce can encourage people to be more creative, more diligent, and harder working. And when board members, employees, and others who shape the values and activities of a nonprofit come from a wide array of backgrounds, they each bring unique perspectives that shape, blend, and influence how to advance the nonprofit's mission to solve problems in potentially more innovative ways. Now, I spent 9 years on the board of Girl Scouts of the USA and 6 of those 9 years as national president. When you heard the statistic about young people in this country and what it means to engage and energize and really leverage the gifts and talents that young people bring, it just makes sense that if we are going to have the kind of seismographic impact we need to have as people of goodwill, we must bring young people with us. So let's start with these 3 things that I learned from that golf instructor who I am pretty sure was kind of happy when I went back to playing my clarinet. The first is play the ball as it lies. Understand your own and your team's implicit views and biases on things. Have courageous conversations. And remember that whatever is visible on the outside is just one dimension of diversity. Diversity can show up in any number of ways: gender, sexual identity, nationality, socioeconomic status, education, veteran status, and many other ways. There are a number of assessment tools that are available to really think about how we look at others and ourselves. Oftentimes the work I'll do in corporate America as we're looking at talent will say, I can't hire that person, or they're not a good fit. So it's important for us to challenge ourselves when we say fit. It's according to whose definition of what makes sense. The beauty of the First T is that you are welcoming to all. It's really looking at ways to determine how we can fall into it, especially when organizations are working to change and become more inclusive. The dialogue goes something like this: we need to add more diversity to our board, to our organization. And I say we sometimes fall into the well. We fall into the well because we say we need to add more diversity to our board, and the response is, well, we can't find them. We fall into the well. We need to challenge ourselves to think about ways to engage young people such that they see how they leverage technology and we can get it. Well, we don't want to change things. So we cannot fall into the well. It's imperative that this incredible work that you're doing and have done already around diversity continues to challenge you to grow so that you can reach 10 million and many, many, many millions more young people. The second thing is play the course as you find it. We must be persistent, consistent, and insistent. It is possible to have diversity without considering justice or equity, but to have inclusion, equity and justice must be modeled and practiced. Think about moving from inclusion to equity in this way. I want you to picture in your mind, picture that there are 3 people standing at a fence. The fence is 6 feet tall. The individuals wanting to peer over that fence are 5 feet tall, 4 feet tall, and 6 feet tall. Everybody's included, but who can really peer over the fence? If we give everyone a 2-inch stool, everybody's still included, but not everyone can peer over the fence. But if we give each individual a stool that is equivalent to the short distance between their height and their ability to peer over that 6-foot fence, that is equity. All have been included, but all was not equal until we understand that equity is a key part of having successful diversity and inclusion. Now, I've been in business long enough to experience the dystopia and all of the isms known to man. Sexism, racism, all of the isms. But what it's taught me as a leader is, as Mark suggested, the whole notion of authenticity and courageous leadership. That I am not successful until all of you believe that you can be successful too, no matter where you come from or how you happened to get here. And that is the power of the first T. Transparency and fact-based decision-making are required, lest the lyrics from one of my favorite musicals become true about the mystery of diversity, and that's Hamilton. You might be familiar with, I want to be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. Yeah. So what happens in diversity is the lyric, there's one stanza to this song that really struck with me. I was in a meeting with our CEO, and he didn't know this was going on in my head, but it was. I was having that kind of party moment in my head when I was thinking about diversity, and here's the stanza. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Not a sound strategy for diversity and inclusion. I come back to, if you're unable to play the ball where it lies, do what is fair. Elie Wiesel said, neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes organizations find themselves, to use a golf analogy, in the rough. Entrenched beliefs, practices, or parts of the culture that create barriers to meaningful change and ingrained exclusionary practices really make it difficult to be in the room where it happens. Now, today, you are all in the room where it happens. You're going to see all kinds of activities and things as you go through your 2 days to suggest that you're going to be in the room where it happens. You're going to see how the sausage gets made, how the game gets played, and you're going to do something about it. Accountability is one of those things that is equally as important and critical. Sometimes when we are in the rough as organizations, we have to think about inclusion and equity differently. A recent article published by the Cultural Intelligence Center suggested a more strategic approach to diversity and inclusion is required, the same way other business opportunities and challenges are addressed. We have to do 3 things: assess the situation, create a strategy, and form metrics for measuring accountability. It goes on to say, if profits are slipping in a company, companies don't plan a profits slipping awareness day and then hope the awareness translates into better returns. No, they create a strategic plan. One of the things that we've done in our firm, and Northern Trust has been a part of this diversity journey for over 30 years. We do have a strategic plan, and the accountability piece is critical to that. It's integrated in our human resources plans, and we look at ways that we can measure the efficacy of that work. We've had an on-site daycare center at our firm for over 20 years. We were one of the first companies to have partner benefits. But that did not come without the constant pushing, accountability, raising levels of awareness, and yes, creating a level of discomfort. Despite the overwhelming success in today's business environment, when you're making the change and doing the work that you're doing, resilience is critical to your success. And I think resilience is a critical attribute for any leader. Resilience has long been touted as an essential capability for bouncing back from leadership setbacks. We all have leadership setbacks. A part of learning to be a good leader is when the thing that you didn't want to happen happens, how do you bounce back? How do you maintain the kind of integrity and character and all of those core values that help make you successful? Rosabeth Moss Kanter advanced the conversation with an excellent article on the topic. Yet, despite the overwhelming consensus and supporting evidence that resilience is vital for success in today's business environment, the truth remains: resilience is hard. It requires the courage to confront painful realities, the faith that there will be a solution when one isn't immediately evident, and the tenacity to carry on despite a nagging but gut feeling that the situation is hopeless, and willingness to learn from mistakes. Kanter says arrogance and complacency crowd out resilience, but humility and a noble purpose fuel it. We go back to the 3 rules that I learned. When you play the ball where it lies, it means that as a young girl growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from a part of the city that meant I didn't have a lot. That when I joined Girl Scouts, my mother couldn't afford to buy my Girl Scout uniform, but she lived long enough to see her daughter become the national president of Girl Scouts of the USA. We play the ball where it lies. We learn to play the ball where it lies when we stand up and say to ourselves, how do I want to be different because I've lived in the world, and how do I want the world to be different because I have lived? How do I want the world to be different because I have lived? Play the ball where it lies. Be courageous to make the changes necessary. Play the course as you find it. I found it. I am the first African-American woman to ever achieve the title of Executive Vice President in the history of our 128-year organization. I had to play the course where I found it. Thank you. There wasn't a role model or a playbook for this. Often finding myself in the rough, but navigating the corporate culture because I also was blessed to have coaches, sponsors, and mentors who were all around me. And I define the coaches talking to you, a mentor talking with you, but the sponsor talks about you. Those people willing to say, just as First T does, we're going to pour things into you. We're going to love on you. We're going to challenge you because we know that what God put inside of you, when it's nurtured and developed, you're going to change the world. Play the course as you find it. And if unable to do either, do what is fair. If unable to do either, do what is fair, which sometimes means I'm not always going to be first, I'm not always going to be best, but I am going to be in the room where it happens. Do what is fair. I had a manager early on in my career when I worked at AT&T who said to me, a fair is a place where they show pigs and cows. If you want to have fair, go to the Wisconsin State Fair. In this context, we're saying do what is fair such that it does not harm others. As you get out of the well and into the wellness of inclusion, equity, and justice, because this is the world that we want to live in, a place where all talents, gifts, and differences are celebrated, acknowledged, and we hold ourselves accountable for every action, every word that we speak. First T, I would say that your noble purpose for 20 years, and to Joe, the retiring CEO, and Derek, the incoming CEO, that you continue, that you would be granted the kind of energy, the kind of intellectual perspicacity and rigor and indefatigable energy to pursue the goals, because there are so many young people waiting and in need of what you bring. So many young people waiting and in need of what you bring. Your noble pursuit is fueled by the evidence of the over 10 million young people who have participated in your programs and your pursuit of a diverse, inclusive, and equitable organization. I extend my best wishes and deepest gratitude to you. And if there's anyone in this room who thinks that you are not a critical part of this, I leave you with an African proverb that says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping in a closed room with a mosquito. Play the course as you find it. Play the ball as it lies. And if you are unable to do either one or two, do what is fair. Thank you.